Imagine waking up in the middle of the night. Your skin is burning. Your vision is blurry. You can't swallow. You are shivering so violently your teeth click together, echoing in the pitch black space around you. And there is no hospital, no antibiotics, no doctor, no emergency room. You are lying on the cold, damp dirt. The wind is howling outside your shelter, rattling the thin animal skins, keeping you from the freezing air. The people around you are awake, watching you in the dim, flickering orange light of a dying fire. And they have absolutely no idea whether you are going to wake up tomorrow. There is no concept of germs, there is no word for bacteria, there is no understanding of viruses, infections, or microscopic pathogens. To the people staring at you, you have simply been possessed by an invisible, demonic force. The air itself has turned against you. So, what did ancient humans actually do when their bodies started failing? How did our ancestors survive in a world where a simple scratch, a bad piece of meat, or a broken ankle was effectively a death sentence? To understand this, we need to step back 300,000 years. We need to look at a hunter who is about to experience the absolute worst week of his life. Let's call him Otis. Otis is sitting in the freezing mud just outside his camp. His stomach is cramping so violently that he cannot stand up. He is sweating, clutching his abdomen, and struggling to breathe. Yesterday, the hunt failed. The tribe was starving. Otis found the remains of an animal left behind by a predator. The meat had been sitting in the sun a little too long. It smelled slightly sweet, slightly rotten. But the survival algorithm in his brain calculated the risk: eat or starve. He ate. Now he is paying the price. Otis doesn't have a word for food poisoning. He has no concept of gastrointestinal distress. He only knows one thing. Something inside his stomach is actively trying to tear its way out. So he does something that seems completely insane. He drags his body toward the edge of a nearby riverbank. He digs his bare fingers deep into the earth. He pulls up a handful of thick gray clay, and he eats it. Today, eating a handful of dirt might get you a psychological evaluation. For our ancestors, it was a desperate, calculated medical intervention. And it worked. When certain types of earth are swallowed, they don't just sit in the stomach. At a microscopic level, they act like a biological sponge. As this specific clay moves through the digestive tract, it magnetically binds to toxins, alkaloids, and harmful bacteria, trapping them. It neutralizes the poison and safely carries it out of the body. It is nature's version of a stomach pump. But how the hell did an ancient human figure this out? They didn't have chemistry degrees. They couldn't see the microscopic structure of the earth. They figured it out by watching the animals. For thousands of years, early humans watched macaws eat poisonous seeds in the jungle and then immediately fly down to riverbanks to eat clay to neutralize the poison. They watched sick chimpanzees dig up specific types of dirt and consume it when they were ill. Our ancestors were not scientists, but they were the greatest observers the planet had ever produced. They watched, they copied, and they survived. Otis's stomach settles. He doesn't die today, but a stomach ache is a minor inconvenience. The ancient world is incredibly violent, and the true filter of prehistoric survival is physical trauma. A month later, Otis is running through a dense, overgrown forest. He is tracking a wounded deer. The adrenaline is pumping so hard that he doesn't even feel the jagged, rotting branch that slices a deep 3-inch gash across his thigh. He wipes the blood away with a dirty, mud-caked hand and keeps running. 2 days later, he cannot walk. The skin around the cut is bright red and stretched tight. It is hot to the touch. It pulses with a deep, rhythmic agony that matches his heartbeat. A thin, angry red line is beginning to creep up his leg. Yellow pus oozes from the center of the wound. Again, Otis doesn't know what a staph infection is. He just feels an invisible fire eating its way up his limb. If this infection reaches his bloodstream, his chances of survival drop to near zero. His body is already fighting the bacteria, but the resulting fever and blinding pain are paralyzing him. If he cannot move, he cannot forage. If he cannot forage, he dies of exposure or starvation long before the infection finishes the job. He needs to turn off the pain. He drags himself to a specific tree near the edge of the water. He pulls out his flint knife and strips off a piece of the bitter, fibrous bark. He puts it in his mouth and starts chewing. This was not a random act of desperation. He sought out this specific tree for a reason. He was chewing willow bark. He doesn't know it, but he is extracting a crude, unpurified version of the exact same active ingredient found in modern aspirin. By chewing the bark, Otis was ingesting a powerful anti-inflammatory painkiller. It didn't magically cure the infection. His immune system still had to fight that brutal, microscopic war. But the bark may have dulled the blinding agony just enough to make movement possible. It might have brought down the raging fever just enough to let him limp back to camp instead of collapsing in the dirt for the wolves to find. But think about the terrifying process of discovery. Nobody taught the tribe this in a classroom. Our ancestors learned through a brutal, generations-long game of biological roulette. Imagine the sheer trial and error required to figure out which plants help you and which plants kill you. Someone, thousands of years ago, chewed a red leaf to stop a headache, and they stopped breathing. Someone else ate a strange mushroom to cure a fever, and they hallucinated until they walked off a cliff. Someone else chewed a piece of tree bark, and their fever broke. The tribe watched. They remembered. They passed the story down around the fire. Human medicine was built on top of a mountain of corpses who simply ate the wrong plant. Every single medicinal cure our ancestors discovered was paid for in blood. But plants can only do so much. What happens when the physical structure of the body is destroyed? Winter is approaching. The ground is slick with freezing rain. Otis is climbing a rocky ridge to scout for migrating herds. His foot slips on wet stone. He falls 15 feet, landing awkwardly on the jagged rocks below. A sickening, loud crack echoes through the canyon. He looks down. His left leg is bent at a completely unnatural, horrifying angle. The tibia is shattered. The bone is pushing hard against the skin, threatening to break through. In the wild, a broken leg is the ultimate death sentence. If a gazelle breaks its leg, it is eaten by a lion. If a wolf breaks its leg, it starves to death. In nature, you are only as useful as your mobility. Otis knows this. He expects the hunters with him to leave. He expects to freeze to death on these rocks or to be torn apart by scavengers when the sun goes down. But the tribe does not leave him. Two men hold his shoulders down against the freezing stone. A third man grabs his shattered ankle. Without anesthesia, without painkillers, they pull. Otis screams as the jagged edges of the bone grind together. They pull until the leg is straight, forcing the broken pieces of the tibia back into alignment. Then they do something extraordinary. They gather thick, wet mud from the riverbank. They slather it heavily around his leg. They take stiff, straight pieces of tree bark and press them into the mud on all sides. They wrap the entire thing tightly in animal hide and vines. As the mud dries in the cold winter air, it hardens into rock. They have just built a custom-fitted orthopedic cast, but setting the bone is only half the battle. Otis cannot walk. He cannot hunt. He cannot forage. For the next 3 months, he will be a massive liability to a group of people who are already struggling to feed themselves. He will slow them down. He will consume precious calories without providing any in return. The cold biological calculus of survival says they should abandon him, but they don't. They carry him. They share their scarce meat with him. They protect him from predators while he is completely defenseless. There is a famous idea in anthropology regarding human evolution. It suggests that the first true sign of human civilization isn't a clay pot, a hunting hook, or a sharpened stone. It is a healed femur, a human thigh bone that has been broken and then healed. A healed femur tells us something extraordinary about the people who lived around it. It means that someone stayed with the person who fell. It means someone bound up the wound, carried them to safety, and fed them for months while they recovered. Our ancestors survived because human beings evolved a survival mechanism that no other animal possesses to this degree. Compassion. Taking care of the sick and injured wasn't just a warm, moral act. It was a strategic, evolutionary advantage. A hunter might have a broken leg, but he still has his mind. He remembers where the hidden water holes are in a drought. He remembers which plants are poisonous. He knows how to chip the sharpest flint spears. If the tribe abandons him, they lose his knowledge. By keeping him alive, they retain his data. In a world before writing, the elderly and the injured were the living libraries of the tribe. Compassion was the ultimate survival cheat code. But there are some threats that compassion cannot heal. There are threats that turn the tribe against itself. Spring arrives. The snow melts. Otis's leg has healed, but a stranger wanders near the camp. He is emaciated, pale, and coughing up thick, dark blood. The hunters immediately raise their spears and aggressively chase him away. But it is too late. 3 days later, one of the children in the camp starts coughing. By nightfall, the child is burning with an unnatural fever. Small, dark lesions begin to appear on their skin. The next morning, 2 more people have the exact same symptoms. The invisible demon has arrived, and it is beginning to leap from person to person. This is not a broken leg. This is not a pain you can dull with bark. This is an epidemic. And in the ancient world, contagion triggers the darkest, most brutal survival algorithm in the human mind. Quarantine. The tribe does not understand viral transmission. They don't know what airborne droplets are, but they understand pattern recognition perfectly. They know that whoever stays near the coughing child will soon start coughing themselves. The compassion that saved a hunter with a broken leg suddenly vanishes. The survival of the society instantly overrides the survival of the individual. The elders make a terrifying decision. The sick must be removed. They do not kill them, but they force them into a small, isolated cave a mile away from the main camp. They leave a supply of water and some dried meat near the entrance, but they do not go inside. They walk away. Imagine being one of the sick. Imagine sitting in the damp, freezing darkness of that cave. Your body is burning. You are struggling to breathe, and the people you have spent your entire life with, the people who carried you, fed you, and protected you, have just abandoned you to the dark. The physical terror of the disease is suddenly matched by the psychological horror of absolute isolation. For a highly social primate like a human, being permanently separated from the tribe is neurologically processed as death. The stress is unimaginable. But even here, in the darkest moment of ancient life, humanity had one final, desperate medical tool: the psychological cure. In the middle of the night, a few members of the tribe sneak to the edge of the quarantine cave. Among them is the shaman, a figure draped in animal skins and bone talismans. They do not go inside, but they stand at the entrance in the pitch black. The shaman begins to chant. It is a low, rhythmic, guttural sound that vibrates through the rock. He beats a hollow wooden drum. Boom, boom, boom. He lights a bundle of dried, fragrant herbs, blowing the thick, sweet-smelling smoke into the mouth of the cave. To a modern observer, beating a drum and burning leaves looks like useless, primitive superstition. It obviously didn't destroy the pathogen, but biologically it may have done something far more basic. When you are sick, terrified, and abandoned, your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. Prolonged panic exhausts a nervous system that desperately needs energy to fight an infection. Fear literally drains the battery your immune system is trying to use. But then, the sick hear the drum. They smell the smoke. They hear the familiar, authoritative voice of the shaman chanting the ancient words of healing. It gave terrified people a reason to believe they were not completely helpless. By believing in the ritual, their brains could begin to step down from a state of sheer, apocalyptic panic. Their heart rates could stabilize. The crushing terror of isolation was pierced by the sound of someone outside trying to save them. It didn't kill the virus, but it gave them the psychological endurance to survive the fever just a little bit longer. Some of them die in that cave, but some of them survive. And when they walk out into the light, they believe the shaman saved them. They believe the magic worked. And because they believe it, the magic will be passed down to the next generation, ready to be used the next time the invisible demon attacks. This was the ancient medical system. It was brutal. It was terrifying. It was built on wild guesses, desperate risks, and the raw, unyielding desire to simply see the sun rise one more time. Look inside your medicine cabinet today. You see neatly labeled plastic bottles. You see precise, perfectly measured chemical dosages. You know exactly what a fever is. You know exactly what causes an infection. You know exactly which tiny white pill will turn off the pain in your head. You have hospitals, you have sterile operating rooms, you have doctors who spend decades studying the exact microscopic mechanisms of the human body. But most of those little white pills are just isolated, purified, laboratory-perfected versions of the desperate, terrified experiments our ancestors ran in the freezing mud thousands of years ago. You have science. They had a piece of tree bark, a handful of dirt, and a rhythm in the dark. You know exactly what is happening inside your body. They didn't even know what a body really was, and yet, every single time you get a fever, every time a cut turns red and then heals, every time your body fights off an infection without you even consciously thinking about it, you are not just taking a pill, you are watching millions of years of brutal, unforgiving survival play out inside your own veins. Our ancestors didn't know the names of the white blood cells fighting the war inside their chests. They didn't know about the inflammatory response. They didn't know about antibiotics. They just had to survive long enough for you to exist. And somehow, against the cold, against the predators, against the invisible demons in the water and the air, they did. If this video helped you understand yourself a little better, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you know. Take care and see you in the next one.